Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ocaran Research Channel for video 73 part 1. Ooh, 73 videos already, it's been a while. And if you're still following the channel, congratulations! So this is part 1 of this new video, which will deal with the author of the what is known as the Zena Halpern's map, though she didn't draw it, she just found it with with Don Ruh, and that was well recorded with a neutral witness, Mr. What was his name? That French teacher, Weimar. That was it. I think it was Weimar. Anyways, we are going to find once for all, I would say, who's the author and the year this map was created. And I'm going to use material that I don't own, so I'm going to use the fair use rule on YouTube. And we're talking about this map here, the one that started the friendship between Michael and myself and started the whole story on my side with Oak Island. And if you're coming to this video, you probably saw all the others, so I will not spend a long time on this. Just to remind that it was found in the back of a book from Emmanuel Anati. It was found on the week of Christmas at Zena Halpern's house. Don Ruh, who inherited this book from somebody Bill Jackson left it to. Don Ruh lent the book to Zena Halpern. She read it. She didn't find anything in it. He came back and maybe he had a hint from one of the documents he received from the heritage. We saw that on my last video about the second wave of documents Don Ruh seems to have inherited from Bill Jackson's friends to whom those documents were given, and when those friends passed out, their instructions from Bill Jackson was that everything was to be given to Don Ruh eventually. Wow, what a story. And that document was not given away, was not passed on to those friends of Bill Jackson. Bill Jackson hid it himself, did not want to give it to anybody he knew. He hid it in the back of that book like a spy would hide a precious document. So precious, I think, that's my and Michael's conclusion, so precious this document was, he did not make it follow the path and circuit going either through Don Ruh by inheritance or Don Ruh by second-hand inheritance, if you wish. But that's in my last video. So today we're going to discover who wrote this and what year it was drawn and sketched. Alright, so this is, to my knowledge, the only photo of the real map we have. Look at the size. What they've got in their hand is a very, very small document. And there's no way the code, the alignment, the lines, and the geometry that is hidden in this document was designed in that sized document. It was made on a larger document and then by photocopy or a process reduced to this. This is just a copy of the original. The original cannot be that small. It's impossible to write all the details by hand, or you need a super big magnifier. I'd rather say this is a photo of the map of the real, and we don't know the size, but I guess pretty big, or this is just a Xerox photocopy with reduction of size of that original document. So it's pretty small. It had to fit in the back sleeve of a book, and the book was not that big. So that's impressive to see that document for real when we know what we've been working on, which is a larger size, of course. So in the past years, geez, have I fought to claim, Michael and myself, to claim that that map was not what people say it was, as a matter of author and origins and things like that. You can find strange theories on the net about who the author was. Here I got that blog called halpernmap.com treasure location in English, where this gentleman here claims loud that the author is Admiral Jean-Baptiste Ducasse, so around 715, something like that. I don't buy it at all now that I know who did it. And you will soon. Others, that's the most common thing you find on any forum, on any beginner, especially non-French speaking, that gets lured by the poor quality of the grammar and the errors and the mistake. And a lot of smart people and intelligent people who've been working a long time on the Oak Island phenomenon do conclude that it's an Englishman that wrote it and made full of mistake, and that's wrong. And I think Mike and especially on my side, demonstrated it was a clever language use, language of the bird, and some coding techniques that match perfectly. And again, Oak Island layout and Oak Island markers, but also Rochefoucauld markers, even Da Vinci markers, etc., they all represent the same thing. So this I never believed in, and that's how I started doing my research on the map. That's funny one that you can still find in a lot of forums and blogs, and it's the Knight Templars who drew that map. That's what Zena Halpern thought herself, that this map was made in 1347. Of course it is. It's written on it 1347 in French, with the error that I highlighted, since we don't put un in front of 1000 dates, 1000 years dates. And because it's written on it, a lot of people still believe, and therefore think it's a hoax, because it can't be at the same time. In their mind, there's like a storm. It's like, it's written on it in 1347, oh, it must be a Templar map, but it can't, because the words are too modern, and Templars don't do maps this way. Of course it's not a Templar map. Of course not. It's something that came later. It's more modern. I bet that my idea, before finding the real date, was that it was 1930s, especially since Paul Valéry was referenced through the poem on the other La Formule companion document, with the note from probably Jim McInnes himself, when handing this over to Bill Jackson, because he gave him this family map. And I'll get back to that at the end, because that kind of suits one theory I have about what's happening. But that's for later. Anyways, it's not the Knight Templars themselves. And in 1347, there was no more Templars around. There was maybe a second derivative society from them. And it was, there was one, but not them firsthand. Even better, Don Ruh himself writes in his own book in 2007, in the Scrolls of Antiora, he explained where the maps come from. He said that Bill Jackson met with a member of Rochefoucauld, and you get that spelling error in all Don Ruh's documents. I still believe it's Rochefoucauld. Dudonville family, and Dudonville is a branch of the Rochefoucauld family, the one I visited in one of my past videos. The man was prominent in France. Bill obtained a number of pages of material from this Rochefoucauld man, one of which was a map depicting an island that resembles in shape Oak Island in Mahone Bay. It was written in French. It's been pictured in Miss Halpern's book, previously mentioned by me. She shared it with person connected to a search on the island. That's the Oak Island Treasure Team. Then revealed on television show, blah, blah. So it's this map we're talking about. And in 2007, Don Ruh writes in his book that Bill Jackson got it from the Rochefoucauld family in France, which is something I believed in for a while and then killed it. It's not what happened. I made an early kill on that one. And then on Scott Walter's blog or forum, in 2018, so 11 years later, Don Ruh is writing this. A little story about the Cremona document and Oak Island map. That's the map we're talking about. Came into my possession, which I then shared to Miss Halpern. Came to his possession with Miss Halpern being involved. This was at her place in front of her eyes that he asked her for a knife and sliced open the last two pages that were glued together. So he shared it with Miss Halpern about half second after he discovered it, since she was there and she saw it all. Beginning 2006, he inherited several parcels of documents from his colleague, Bill died in 2000, and left the material to me. They included criminal document and the Oak Island map he acquired in 1994. Still the story of the page before. All right, so that's in 1994 that all that happened, right before the Rochefoucauld person died in 1995. In 2008, blah, 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 transfer evidence, blah, blah. So here he's still saying that he got the map in 1994, that he acquired, that Bill Jackson acquired, paid for probably. But later, in the same blog, that's still Don Ruh. Miss Halpern never knew is that the map of Oak Island came into my possession in 2015 now, which doesn't make sense since he got it in 2007, right? Because in his book he already features it. So that's something that doesn't work. And I didn't write that. That's Don Ruh's. It was never related in any way to the criminal document. The Oak Island map is a fabrication, most likely created by Bill Jackson. So now it's not about Bill Jackson acquiring it from the Rochefoucauld family. Same guy speaking, same Don Ruh, years later. And now it's about creating a scheme for the P2 Masonic Lodge in Italy, which was involved in the scandal of trying or achieving to kill the Pope at the time. Some crazy story with the communists, with blah blah. I mean, almost a coup in Italy made by that Masonic Lodge. And he carries on shortly after discovering the map hidden in the page in 2015. So maybe I'm wrong, sorry, maybe I'm wrong. I am wrong, this is 2017, that's better. So that's, yeah, 2017. And now 2018. So Scrolls of Anteora is from 2017, and he writes this, and 1 year later on Scott's blog he writes in 2018 that it's a full other story. So he discovers that map hidden in the pages, but he claims now it's a fabrication. I don't trust neither nor. And this is another letter he produces on Scott Walter's blog in 2018. The letter dates from 1979, and if at the beginning it's Dan and Drake suggested at Ask You to Engrave, we needed to come up with some means to entice the P2 people to want to bid on the Ellie letter, whose back we have imprinted with the design that appears to have a solution on the Oak Island treasure. That's the map again. That's what he says on Scott Walter's blog. Now, the problem with this, as debunked by many people, including especially Michael in one of his videos and myself, is that in 1979, you did not have access to this font type. This font is much more modern. This is a laser or an inkjet capable font. That's not the font you would have on typewriters in 1979. So I claim this is fake again. So I don't trust Don Ruh on the explanation. I think he doesn't know. I think he doesn't know who created it for real. And he also recognizes, I think, that's my personal belief, he recognizes it was very important since he didn't get it by the usual mean of inheritance, where it's got all the criminal documents this mean, where Bill Jackson gave him by heritage his document. This Bill Jackson never gave it to Don Ruh. Don Ruh found it hidden in one of the documents that was left over by Bill Jackson, one of the book. And he doesn't know who wrote it, but he thinks it's important and he's making up all these stories. Trying to tell us basically, and a lot of people believe this, it's not important. It's a hoax we created, or Bill and his friend created. Nobody cares. There's even mention about he created a third version from Don Ruh, almost Putin guy, with 20 answers to the same question, 20 different ones. He even claims at one moment that The map was part of a novel that Bill Jackson wanted to write, and part of his novel was a treasure map, and he created that treasure map. This is again BS, right? Okay, let's carry on. Don Ruh. So Don Ruh is now teaming up with Scott Walter, and you guys know Scott Walter. If you don't, just type his name on the internet and you'll discover the guy. So now Don is quite old and is going to pass away someday, like all we all do, humans. And Don inherited from a lot of people Jackson's material, and I think Scott Walter wants his hand on it and become the next heir, the next inheritance guy to these documents, so he can use them for his own account. But Don speaks too much. Sorry, Scott speaks too much. Scott wants to reveal a lot of things they've got into all those documents that they don't want the production show or even us to see. If you remember the book I analyzed in my last video, well, that book was full of blackened out areas where we just buy a book that doesn't say anything because everything's blacked out. Now, Scott Walter made two mistakes, and during seminars and during film seminars, he produced documents, and if you watch the videos, you will realize that he realizes he makes a mistake, and those documents appear on screen about half a second or 1 second, and he passes away because he doesn't really want the audience or us to see it. The problem is that we can pause a YouTube video and take a snapshot, and that's what I did. And I'm going to reveal to you 5 documents that Scott produced during seminars and conferences, but they don't appear in any book, and they've never been seen before, I think, at least by me, and I do look for those kind of things on the internet. So the first website you can go to is the Encyclopedia Masonica, and it's one of my viewers who pointed me to this video here, saying, hey, you probably saw it. And I'm like, no, I did not. And if you want to have a look at it, it's very interesting. Even more interesting is the website, Encyclopedia Masonica. In the About section, this channel won't be monetized and is intended to be used as a backup of hard-to-find content. As an example, Scott Walter's presentation suddenly disappeared from YouTube without warning. So I tracked one down and reposted it as backup for others to watch. And I thank you, dear Mr. Encyclopedia Masonica, because I think Scott Walter realized he was disclosing documents he didn't want to, or maybe Don Ruh hit him hard on the back of his head saying you shouldn't have done that, and sometime after the video was broadcasted on YouTube, it got removed. But that guy made a copy, and he's republishing that copy of what Scott Walter don't want you to see, and we're gonna take those snapshots and analyze them together. Another one is here, the Cosmic Summit webpage. I got no clue what they're talking about. All I know is that there is a Classroom Scott Walter and Heidi Ramsey video about, again, some stuff about that last book he published and those extra documents they revealed. And we're gonna see together. So this is the first document, and it's in a seminar or a conference. The conference is filmed, that's what you see on YouTube. And he produced this document half a second, or maybe 1.5 seconds, shows the English translation because it's in French on the left-hand side, and then it disappears. It doesn't even provide any more of this, and we're gonna do that, his homework. We're gonna do it. That's document number 2. It's a big map. I've never seen that before, and we're gonna investigate it and pay close attention. That's document number 3. It's a list with numbers from 1 to 31 or plus, with some blackened area. And we're gonna see again what's behind this. Document number 4 is a map, and it's not Oak Island. It's another map with some inscription, and we're gonna try to pay attention to this. And document number 5 is this page, and if you don't remember, I can give you a hint. It's an extract from the Book of the War of the Lord, which is an interesting book, as we saw in the last video. And we're gonna get back to it because we got a very, very good version and copy of it. So we're going to deep dive into those 5 documents and see what they can reveal and if they give us any information about our map, the good old Zena Halpern's map. I still call it this way. So the document number 1, numéro 1, that's from the French video. I made it, it's in French on the right hand side, and it's in modern French. It's some French that you would find after the beginning of the 20th century. I mean 1901. That's the type of French spelling, writing, totally readable. I can't read 14th century French in text. It's too complicated, just like if you try to read 14th century English. You'd be lost in the word they use, in the grammar, the structure. Everything would be hard. I can read like I read my newspaper in the morning. Pretty modern. What does this say? And that's where it's coming very interesting. So it is a translation of what's on the right hand side. I'm the last of my name. Just starting with this. I'm the last of my name. Clyphus Licinius sailed with the Gotlanders in 1158 and again with the poor Knight of Christ, the Templars, from 1174 to 1180. I'm just going to read it all and we're just going to deep dive into each sentence. Clyphus Licinius, slightly different spelling, linked to Fiammetta Capelli, worked with De Leon in 1512 and Giovanni da Verrazzano in March 1524 to trace the Jordan River. I compiled their works with Pedro Alonso's Nino, 1499, Antonio Zeno's maps, oh sorry, it's the Google translation, it should be maps and not cards here, 1348, Father Richard's sidekick map, and myself. Father Richard L'acolyte, which would be his helper, instead of, how did he translate? He translates sidekick. That's his helper, is the person who would help him on everyday life, and his assistant, if you want. Let's carry on. Only 3 in our range have been graphic creators. We are known by our seals. In 1308, it was marked where a piece of the cross and his blood is found with that of his lineage. Let the true believers reclaim them against Rome and other idolaters. 1722. An attempt to recover them was made in 1643 but failed. Many of our lines have hidden in other people's names because being a maker and a map reader is a heavy burden, often a curse. Thought after by the rich and greedy for basic profits, what would be the value if you win the world but lose your soul? The truth will set you free, and you're here, la vérité vous libérera, and you get the 3 seals. For where your treasure is also your heart, that's the last sentence. And I found out there were biblical reference, and this is the verse set and the author you would find those 2 sentences from. I already thought about some numerical equation or geometry or whatever, but okay. Let's go back. What is this saying? So it's the author is talking at first person. I'm the last of my name. I'm writing this, talking to you. Clyphus Licinius sailed with the Gotlanders. So the Gotlanders are people who lived originally in Sweden and probably Norway and what we call Denmark now. Sweden was not that established in the days, and it's people from the Dansk, Norway, Sweden region. And they say that there's a Clyphus Licinius who sailed with them already in 1158. Sailed where? You get a clue? You get a guess? Because that Clyphus Licinius sailed again with the Templars from 1174 to 1180, which is exactly what the Scrolls of Antiora, a year to remember document, talks about. It's that journey of a group of men, some Templars, some not, into North America, all the way from Nova Scotia to the Hudson River, looking for a forgotten temple and documents and scrolls. So there's that Clyphus Licinius who made 2 trips. And when they say sail with the Gotlanders, probably to Nova Scotia or Labrador or Americas, North America, with, and it came again with the Templar. There's a second one. The spelling is slightly different, and I don't know if it's on purpose, if it's an error, if it's a different name. I think we should read Licinus again. But it's not the same, because now we're talking about 1512. We were talking about 1100. The guy cannot be 400 years old. So there's another character who's taking the same name or something very similar, and now that character is linked with Fiammetta Capelli. We don't know who it is. De Leon, we heard about the De Leon report in the Scrolls of Antiora. And Giovanni da Verrazzano I never knew of, though I should, because I'm French, and he's almost French, and I'll tell you in a second who he was. To trace the Jordan River in 1524, the Jordan River in Israel was traced, no problem, in 1524. I mean, they knew where it was. So what are they talking about here? We'll see that in a moment. I compiled their works. The guy who wrote this in modern French, I compiled their works with Pedro Alonso's Nino. I don't know who that is, but we're going to discover and we're going to find a big surprise. Antonio Zeno, if you never heard of Antonio Zeno, is a map maker with some crazy story about the maps he had, or he made about the new worlds that were destroyed, re-glued together like pieces of puzzles and blah blah. And on there you can find continents that were not supposed to be discovered in 1348. And I don't know who Father Richard's acolyte or helper is, and yet to do researches, and myself. So that guy who's talking, he's got material that he compiled with Alessandro Nino, Zeno's map, some map thing, and he compiled them. Next sentence, only 3 in our range have been graphic creators. Whoa, that's interesting, like a secret society. Only 3 in our range have been graphic creator. We are known by our seals, those seals that are reproduced here. So what this person is telling us about is that there is a lineage of cartographers, graphic creators, and map makers. That lineage, they all call Clephus Licinius. That one sailed with the Gotlanders and probably was recording maps. And he sailed with the poor Knight of Chris, maybe, and we're going to find this indication, this writing, that he was their guide, that he knew the waters ahead because he's been there. And then 400 years later, 350, you get another of his order, another CLY, Clephus Licinius. Link with other people of his time. Are they famous people? Are they relevant people? We're going to see that in a moment. And he's talking. He compiled the map with other people's map that he's got. He compiled them, making more information on those maps. We're 3 in my range. Probably in a given time, a given period, this year, 2024, there's, or maybe earlier, there's in parallel 3 creators. And when one dies, his son or somebody whose name takes over. And they're using those signatures since the first one in 1158 maybe. There are slightly different signatures, but they all include C, L, and Y. Clephus, Licinius, Isabeau. Then we got complementary information. In 1308, it was marked where a piece of the cross, I guess Jesus, and his blood is found with that of his lineage. If it's Jesus, he's not supposed to have a lineage. Or maybe an ascendant one, but not a descendant one. In 1308, it was marked. 1308. Isn't that when it's like 5 years after Jacques de Molay asked for a expedition of 3 ships to leave La Rochelle to bury the relic. See my past video for this one. Let the true believers reclaim them against Rome and other idolaters. This guy doesn't like the Catholic Church. Let the true believer against Rome. They are against, and probably the Templars were not that friendly with the dogmas of the Catholic Church, since they found something that defied defied the Catholic Church. And that's that number here. So it's this one morceau de croix de son sang avec Jésus que livrait, que il récupère contre Rome et d'autres. This one here. That's the sign here, 1722. And maybe that was written in 1722, that sentence. An attempt to recover everything was made in 1643, which doesn't relate to my knowledge to any date, not the Rochefoucauld expedition, the Duc d'Anville, and nothing yet there. Many of our lines have hidden in other people's name because being a maker and a map reader is a heavy burden, often a curse, sought after by the rich, blah, 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 blah. And Scott Walter didn't want you to have all this. And that's very interesting. It explained kind of the link again with my past video, that lineage of generation of after generation. There's been people who watch over that island, who go there every 100 years or 80 years, each generation, to see if the mechanism was still working and everything was in place. There's been people who participated in the first trip, even before the Templars got there, and started to record maps. And this is the type of maps we have now. But this was not written in 1347. This was written in, I give it to you, 1965. But we're going to see why in a second. Interesting, isn't it? So we're talking about the Clyfus listeners who sailed with the Gotlanders and then again with the poor Knight of Christ, which is a Templar, in 1174. In the Scrolls of Ontario, page 2019 from Don Ruh. What do you got? You got this text. Clyfus did, however, choose to check his measurement upon the morrow at eventide, and as he was at work, did a rain begin, and he cried, "Oh, Astroth!" And upon his utterance did a lightning bolt strike his metal, his armor, and he was killed at the rain turned to snow. This is the scroll, the year to remember, the journey, the Cremona document that they spent over 3 years, the full voyage. And they talk about a Clyfus. And they talk about a Clyfus with that sailed with the poor Knight of Christ, the Gotlanders, and the Nouveau Éclipse Chevalier. That's the date. And that's the date. From that date to that date, here they are, which match this one. So he probably died between 77 and 80, probably in 79 or 78. Not right when he came in and not at the very last day, because here they were backpacking is not the right word, but they were hiking in the Catskills Mountains by the Hudson River. And so that's the Clyfus. So that Clyfus is mentioned in the Scrolls of Ontario and is mentioned in that letter from, I give it to you now, 1965. They're talking about the same Clyfus, the same person who died there. But if he died, he didn't have children coming to take over. So if his sign was CLY, Clyfus Licinius Isarbo, then to his honor maybe, for his remembrance of his name, that's the code name that's given to the subsequent map keepers and map makers and etc. One very interesting thing is at the very moment he gets struck by the lightning, he says and yells, "Oh, Astroth." Who's Astroth? Astroth is another name of the Astarte, from the Greek Astarte, goddess. In Hebrew, Astarte is said to be Ashtaroth, which is close to Astroth, and it's Astroth if you read it in French. I got it somewhere there. Even more interesting, and she's the goddess Ishtar for the Babylonians. Even more interesting, for the Carthaginians, she's Tanit. Wow, Tanit. Does that remind you anything? Tanit. So first of all, did Clyfus speak Hebrew? Because it doesn't say Astarte in Greek. It says Astaroth, the Hebrew version of the name of that goddess. And Astarte, where did I have that? Oh, did I miss it? The Zena Halpern's original book, which is here, the Templar Mission to Oak Island, she makes a links to Tanis, and she really thinks those people worshipped Tanis and not Jesus. Let's put it this way. in her book, which is part, this is part of the Scrolls of Antera, of the Cremona document themselves. They say that equinox has passed since long. The Spaniard suffers greatly from the cold. They're in not in Iceland. I think they don't mention, but from the description, they're either in Denmark or in the Orkneys or in Iceland, with a greater preference for myself that they're in the Orkneys, from the historical context they give, the king they meet, and the people that welcome them. Their trip was like this, through England, and from there maybe a boat, and then what? Well, then let's see. Then, from where they left, one of those points, of the 3 points, they set sail north by northwest. North by northwest could be this direction, okay, reaching Iceland, till below the North Star. Then west, as the wind takes us, we make landfall in a fortnight. So that's 14 days, a fortnight. West. 14 days west. West is here, right? They could have been made going that way. That was okay. It's still west for somebody who's on the ship. It's not going to give you the exact degree from the compass. And the winds push that direction. We know that from one of my past video, which was named The Incredible Journey to Oak Island. And on that video, which I took here, the snapshot, the slides, remember that stretch was 16 square, so 16 days. We're talking about a fortnight. That's pretty much it. And what do you do in 16 days going west? Maybe if you live here and you remember that current and you would make a junction to this current, that's west if you're on the boat, right? Okay, it goes northwest, southwest, blah, blah, but that's globally west. And that's take 40 days, a fortnight, 16 days. And you reach a place that the Gotlanders knew about, the Danish and the Vikings. It's called Lanzo Meadows, which is the certified first settlement, one of the first one, dated by year 1000, and Eric the Red, who made a small settlement there. Is this what they're talking about? When, let me take this again. We set sail north by northwest till below North Star. The wind takes us in a landfall in a fortnight. So let's pretend they reach Labrador or Lanzo Meadow area. What do they find there? They find a dozen mud huts, which looks like a small settlement. It's not Iceland. I mean, Reykjavik existed, I guess, and there was not just a dozen mud huts. Here we're talking about a settlement. Could be in Greenland, but could very well be Lanzo Meadow settlement, and we are in 11 something, right? Very early. The Lanzo Meadow was founded in 1000 or 980. Interesting. The hospitality is warm and we are well cared for. Here we take on a man called Clyphus. It's our good old Clyphus Licinius. So he's from there, or he's at this very moment of his life. He is there. He's not in Europe. They traveled 14 days west. He's already waiting for them either in one of those Catholic settlements in Greenland or already in Lanzo Meadow settlement. And Clyphus is said by other people, according to the way it's written, to have knowledge of the waters ahead. And what are the waters ahead? Well, if you're at Lanzo Meadows, the water ahead, if you're at Lanzo Meadows, which I can't remember, I think it's here, Lanzo Meadows actually, but if you know the water ahead, you know the waters ahead. How do you know them? Because you've been there with the Gotlanders in 1158, right? Before. And now you're guiding the poor the Chevalier du Temple, the Knight of the Poor Templars Knight. To where? Maybe to Oak Island in New Scotland. Interesting. So, that's for the first sentence. You see why I split this video in two parts, so long it's going to be? That's the first sentence. The second sentence is as interesting. Who's that Fiammetta Capelli? Who's the Dolion? Who's Giovanni da Verrazzano? Da Verrazzano, native of The castle of the castle in Grève was born in 1489, blah, 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 blah. And his parents, Verrazzano and Fiammetta Capelli, there she is. So she's the mother. Cliffus Licinius linked to Fiammetta Capelli, work with Giovanni da Verrazzano. Linked with, married? If he's the husband, he would then be Pier Andrea Bernardo de Verrazzano. I don't think it is. Linked another way. And what did that Verrazzano did? He was living in Dieppe, France. He became in contact with the leader of the French Navy. He persuaded King François Ier to promote an expedition aimed to find a passage to the west from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. Magellan, I guess, still haven't found it. I don't know. Verrazzano was thus the first to explore the east coast of the current USA. April 17, 1524, he reached New York Bay and what was later called the Hudson River. And the Scrolls of Antera Cremona documents is all about the Hudson River. In 1528, during his third expedition, he was captured and eaten by a tribe of crab cannibals. That's the sad way to finish his life. But with Columbus, Vespucci, Cabot, Verrazzano is one of the great Italian contributed to exploration. So he was in New York on April, or it was not even called New York, he called it New Angoulême when he discovered it. April 17, 1524. And here in March, he was with Verrazzano. And here in April, he was in front of New York. So he left La Rochelle or the coasts or French Harbor probably a month and a half ago. So the conclusion is that Cliffus Licinius, this one, was on the boat with Verrazzano since in March he was talking to him and working with him. But in March, Verrazzano was probably on the ocean. And what were they doing? They were tracing the Jordan River, not in Israel. There is a Jordan River, which is here, or whatever it reached, near Montreal. Is that what they were charting, the waters, and is that of any importance? I don't know. Maybe it could also be something else they call the Jordan River that's not the Jordan River. Maybe it was the river of the new promised land in the new Jerusalem, whatever. I don't know. But interesting, that Verrazzano guy. So Verrazzano discovered the Hudson River estuary, was seduced by the richness of the region that is now New York City. So he also landed, because he went through the whole coast of East America from Florida all the way to Nova Scotia. He landed in Newport Bay. You know, Newport Tower, supposedly built by the Templars. He landed there. He called it the Refuge because it was very well protected from the high seas. He lived there for a fortnight, fraternizing with the native population. So if he was there in 1524, the tower was already built, so he knew about the tower. He continued on to Canada, on the outskirts of the island of Newfoundland, having exhausted provision. He said, of course, for the east, he was back in Dieppe on July 1524. And here in the Scrolls of Antioch, this is from Wikipedia, right, and from pages specializing on Verrazzano, but in Wiki, on the Scrolls of Antioch, Cliffus Licinius, linked to Fiammetta, work with the Leon. Oh, sorry, no, that's from the same document. March 1524. So it was probably on the boat. I already searched. The boat was named La Dauphine, and I got the manifest of who was on board. And one of the 85 men on board was Cliffus Licinius. But who is it? Which one? I don't know. Interesting. And he was the map maker. Again, map specialist. Map specialist in that exploration. I mean, I got names, huh? I got 3 candidates. I don't know. I don't even know if it's important. All right, so we did that sentence. We did that sentence. Now, Pedro Alonso Nino. I don't know who that is. Zeno, I got a clue. And Father Richard, I never found. But Pedro, Alessandro, Nino, hang on to the edge of your seat. So that person, that Cliffus Licinius number whatever, in the descendancy, whatever number, maybe 26, 28 of his name, is still compiling in those days, in 1965, the work with Alessandro Nino, etc. Pedro Alonso Nino, Spanish navigator. That's the most interesting part. That person explored the west coast of Africa in his early years and many other places. Nino guided Columbus and navigated the Atlantic Ocean as he piloted the Santa Maria during Christopher Columbus' expedition in 1492. So there were 3 ships, La Pinta, La Nina, and La Santa Maria. And La Santa Maria, which I thought was the head ship, was piloted. The captain was that Nino guy, that Pedro Alonso. He guided Columbus. He knew more than Columbus about the destination, maybe. And what we say is that the author here, Cliffus Licinius, compiled the works of those Cliffus Licinius, of the other ones. I compiled their work with the one from the guy who discovered America with Columbus. So maybe he's got map from the guys before. Because it seems the Cliffus Licinius lineage knew more about North America coasts than Columbus himself. I don't know. Interesting. And that's the Reverend Jordan. So that was the first document, which is already telling a lot about those map maker lineage, generation after generations. 3 of them, always at a given moment in time, and using 3 different types of signature, who all mean Cliffus Licinius Isarbo. The document number 2 that Scott Walter produces in one of his conferences is this one, and it's a list. And we can see he blackened out some things he doesn't want us to see, but we'll get access to it. And no later than the next slides, because this is what is written. You see, it's 22 item in the list, and actually give it to us the next day. So what is this? It's a list of stop points or milestones through which those people went and which are referenced on those maps. 21, 2, 3, 21, 22, 23. It all happened here. And Scott Walter is kind enough to have us colored the numbers. So 21 is the red, 22 is the orange, and 23 is the yellow. And what it says at 22, for instance, the observatory is built here. The hut on the day observer is on the right, and the night on the left, and the field measurement, blah, blah. That's Newport Star. That's what they call the observatory. That's interesting. So they were map makers. And if you want to know the following and the analysis of the rest of the document, you're going to have to change videos and go to part 2, which I'm going to record right now. Thank you, and see you on the other side.